Things you didn't know about William Shakespeare. Shakespeare's parents were probably illiterate, and his children almost certainly were. Nobody knows for sure, but it's quite likely that John and Mary Shakespeare never learned to read or write, as was often the case for people of their standing during the Elizabethan era. Some have argued that John's civic duties would have required basic literacy, but in any event he always signed his name with a mark. William, on the other hand, attended Stratford's local grammar school, where he mastered reading, writing and Latin. His wife and their 2 children who lived to adulthood, Susanna and Judith, are thought to have been illiterate, though Susanna could scrawl her signature. Shakespeare married an older woman who was 3 months pregnant at the time. In November 1582, 18-year-old William wed Anne Hathaway, a farmer's daughter 8 years his senior. Instead of the customary 3 times, the couple's intention to marry was only announced at church once, evidence that the union was hastily arranged because of Anne's eyebrow-raising condition. 6 months after the wedding, the Shakespeares welcomed a daughter, Susanna, and twins Hamnet and Judith followed in February 1585. Little is known about the relationship between William and Anne, besides that they often lived apart and he only bequeathed her his second-best bed in his will. Nobody knows what Shakespeare did between 1585 and 1592. To the dismay of his biographers, Shakespeare disappears from the historical record between 1585, when his twins' baptism was recorded, and 1592, when the playwright Robert Greene denounced him in a pamphlet as an upstart crow. The insult suggests he'd already made a name for himself on the London stage by then. What did the newly married father and future literary icon do during those 7 lost years? Historians have speculated that he worked as a schoolteacher, studied law, traveled across continental Europe or joined an acting troupe that was passing through Stratford. According to one 17th century account, he fled his hometown after poaching deer from a local politician's estate. Shakespeare's father held a lot of different jobs, and at one point got paid to drink beer. The son of a tenant farmer, John Shakespeare was nothing if not upwardly mobile. He arrived in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1551 and began dabbling in various trades, selling leather goods, wool, malt and corn. In 1556 he was appointed the borough's official ale taster, meaning he was responsible for inspecting bread and malt liquors. The next year he took another big step up the social ladder by marrying Mary Arden, the daughter of an aristocratic farmer who happened to be his father's former boss. John later became a moneylender and held a series of municipal positions, serving for some time as the mayor of Stratford. In the 1570s he fell into debt and ran into legal problems for reasons that remain unclear. We probably don't spell Shakespeare's name correctly, but, then again, neither did he. Sources from William Shakespeare's lifetime spell his last name in more than 80 different ways, ranging from Shapere to Shaxpert. In the handful of signatures that have survived, the bard never spelled his own name William Shakespeare, using variations or abbreviations such as William Shake, William Shakespeare and William Shakespeare instead. However it's spelled, Shakespeare is thought to derive from the Old English words shaken, to brandish, and spear, and probably referred to a confrontational or argumentative person. Shakespeare's epitaph wards off would-be grave robbers with a curse. William Shakespeare died on April 23, 1616, at the age of 52, not bad for an era when the average life expectancy ranged between 30 and 40 years. We may never know what killed him, although an acquaintance wrote that the bard fell ill after a night of heavy drinking with fellow playwright Ben Jonson. Despite his swift demise, Shakespeare supposedly had the wherewithal to pen the epitaph over his tomb, which is located inside a Stratford church. Intended to thwart the numerous grave robbers who plundered England's cemeteries at the time, the verse reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." It must have done the trick, since Shakespeare's remains have yet to be disturbed. Shakespeare wore a gold hoop earring, or so we think. Our notion of William Shakespeare's appearance comes from several 17th century portraits that may or may not have been painted while the bard himself sat behind the canvas. In one of the most famous depictions, known as the Chandos portrait after its one-time owner, the subject has a full beard, a receding hairline, loosened shirt ties and a shiny gold hoop dangling from his left ear. Even back in Shakespeare's time, earrings on men were trendy hallmarks of a bohemian lifestyle, as evidenced by images of other Elizabethan artists. The fashion may have been inspired by sailors, who sported a single gold earring to cover funeral costs in case they died at sea. North America's 200 million starlings have Shakespeare to thank for their existence. William Shakespeare's works contain more than 600 references to various types of birds, from swans and doves to sparrows and turkeys. The starling, a lustrous songbird with a gift for mimicry, native to Europe and Western Asia, makes just one appearance, in Henry IV, Part 1. In 1890, an American bartolator named Eugene Skiffelen decided to import every kind of bird mentioned in Shakespeare's oeuvre but absent from the United States. As part of this project, he released 2 flocks of 60 starlings in New York's Central Park. 120 years later, the highly adaptable species has taken over the skies, becoming invasive and driving some native birds to the brink of extinction. Some people think Shakespeare was a fraud. How did a provincial commoner who had never gone to college or ventured outside Stratford become one of the most prolific, worldly and eloquent writers in history? Even early in his career, Shakespeare was spinning tales that displayed in-depth knowledge of international affairs, European capitals and history, as well as familiarity with the royal court and high society. For this reason, some theorists have suggested that one or several authors wishing to conceal their true identity used the person of William Shakespeare as a front. Proposed candidates include Edward de Vere, Francis Bacon, Christopher Marlowe, and Mary Sidney Herbert. Most scholars and literary historians remain skeptical about this hypothesis, although many suspect Shakespeare sometimes collaborated with other playwrights. William Shakespeare was a grain hoarder. According to the UK Parliament, between 1604 and 1914 over 5,200 enclosure bills were enacted, which restricted the use of vital, publicly used farmland. Ensuing riots in 1607, called the Midland Revolts, coincided with a period of devastating food shortages. It appears that Shakespeare responded to the situation by hoarding grain. According to the Los Angeles Times, he purchased and stored grain, malt and barley for resale at inflated prices to his neighbors and local tradesmen. The Globe Theatre burned down during a performance of one of William Shakespeare's plays. On June 29, 1613, a prop cannon caused a fire at the Globe Theatre during a performance of Henry VIII. Sparks landed on the thatched roof and flames quickly spread. It kindled inwardly, and ran round like a train, consuming within less than an hour the whole house to the very ground, a witness Sir Henry Wotton claimed. According to the Telegraph, the only reported injury was a man whose flaming breeches were eventually put out using a handy bottle of ale. William Shakespeare may have been a tax cheat. In the late 16th century, English residents had to pay a tax on personal wealth called a lay subsidy. In 1597, Shakespeare was supposed to pay a tax of 5 shillings. The following year, he was supposed to pay a larger tax of 13 shillings and 4 pence. Documents show that the bard never paid the piper. His reasons are a matter of speculation, but it could have been a clerical error because he'd already moved away from the parish. The first printed reference to William Shakespeare as a playwright was an insult. The first mention of William Shakespeare as a playwright appeared in 1592, when the dramatist Robert Greene, or possibly Henry Chettle, called him an upstart crow, who supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you. In other words, a jack of all trades, and a master of none. Future reviewers would offer kinder words. In 1598, the critic Francis Maris called him mellifluous and honey-tongued. Dear viewers, do not forget to subscribe, like and comment for the development of our channel. Stay with love.